Okay, today we are going to be building the angle plate in OnShape. Just take a quick look at this. It's basically composed of some basic shapes. We've got the L extrusion here, and then we have two things called ribs or webs right here, which are symmetric and relatively centered up. And then we've got a bunch of fillets sort of round everything out. So let's take a look at our drawing. Drawing's relatively simple, but there's a few things we need to be able to determine from it. So number one is the overall size of our L shape. So our total height here is 2 3/4 of an inch. Our total width here is 4 3/4 of an inch. And our depth, which is what we're going to extrude in the initial shape, is 4 3/4 of an inch as well. So again, like I said, we're going to start with this kind of L shape here. You'll notice that the fillet is present here. However, it is much better to do the fillets at the very end, so we're going to save those for the last step. We're going to leave this a sharp corner here, and our material thickness, I didn't actually zoom out on that. Our material thickness on the bottom is 3/4 of an inch, and it's also on the back of the angle plate as well. It's also 3/4 of an inch. So let's get started making that, and then we'll worry about the webs in a bit. So I'm just going to go back, and we're going to start a new document. I'm going to call it angle plate, let's say 3, because I think that's what I'm up to. All right, so right on our front plane, we're going to right click and hit new sketch. We're going to view normal to our front plane. And we're going to use the line tool, and I'm just going to come down here and produce our basic L shape. And again, I'm just kind of guessing on the sizes, just making sure that everything is correct up and down. Now, I'm going to purposely make a mistake here. You can see that this line is not horizontal. So if I need to correct that, I can actually come up here to our constraints and click on horizontal, and then tell it, hey, I want you to be horizontal. All right, so let's get some dimensions going here. So remember, our height was 2 3/4 of an inch, 2.75, and our length was 4.75, and our material thickness here was 3/4 of an inch, and then our material thickness here was also 3/4 of an inch. All right, I like where that's at, so we'll just finish that sketch. We're going to rotate a little bit, and then we'll do an extrusion. We're going to select this, make sure we're on new. We've selected our sketch, and we're going to extrude again 4 3/4 of an inch. So 4.75. Now, really important for this particular one, we're going to switch this from blind to symmetric, because eventually we're going to be using the mirror tool, and we want to use the front plane, which goes right down the middle, as our mirror plane, so that will be advantageous to us later on in the build. I generally start things symmetric unless I know that they don't need to be symmetric, but if you're not sure, just make them symmetric. All right, so there's our basic L shape. Let's go in and take a look at our webs. So our webs, or ribs, those are 3/8 of an inch wide each, okay? They are 1 inch in from the ends, 1 inch here, and then we would assume 1 inch here as well, based on our measurements, because we take 4 3/4, we subtract 3/8 and 3/8, that takes off our 3/4. Then we subtract 1 inch and 2 inches, that's 3, so that leaves us with 1 inch on the end there, plus everything's symmetric. And then we've got 2 inches spacing in the middle. So our middle plane is actually 1 inch from the edges, from the inside edges of each of these ribs. So it's actually going to be really hard for us to draw these ribs. So what we need to do is create a drawing plane that's right up against the edge of this rib. So what we'll do is we'll actually offset our front plane by 1 inch. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here. I just caused an error here. We're going to stay on the page. What we're going to do is we're going to, like I said, offset our front plane, because again, that's right in the middle. We want to move it over a little bit to the left by exactly 1 inch, I should say. So if we go through our tools here, we've got one that says plane right next to the helix tool, and right next to the offset surface tool. So we'll click on plane. Okay, it's got a few options here. So if we go down, we've got offset, which is most likely what we're going to use. Plane point, which is kind of nice. 3 points. So there's lots of different ways to generate work planes, as these are called. But the one we're going to use is very simple, just offset. So basically it wants to know what plane are we going to duplicate, and it's going to basically offset it from its own direction. So if I click on front, we're going to be fortunate in that it's going the correct direction. It could be the wrong way. And I said we're going to do this 1 inch, but maybe it's 3 inches. Who knows? I just want to show you what that does. So if I set it 3 inches, you can see how far away that plane is. It's off the material here. But again, we want this to go 1 inch, and we're going in the correct direction here. So we will just accept that. So right on plane 1, we're going to make a new sketch, and we're going to look normal to it. Let's get some dimensions for our ribs. So we said they're 3/8 of an inch thick, but if we're drawing them from this direction, we need to know the height and the width, and we're going to eventually extrude them 3/8 of an inch. So what's the height and the width? Well, let's look at our 1.5 inches here. We can see that touches off of the top of one of the ribs, and then it goes down to this theoretical corner here. That's why we left that a sharp corner. And then our 3.5 also comes from there. And if we were to project that over, it would come right up to the front of these ribs as well. So our ribs are going to be 1.5 tall, 3.5 wide. So the first thing we need to do, because remember we're drawing right here, we're kind of in the middle of our material. So what we need to do is be able to reference these edges, because we're going to be dimensioning off of them. So we're going to go up here to the Use button. We're going to click Use, and then we're going to click this edge and that edge. Let me turn it so you can see now it's drawn those edges on our sketch plane. And we don't need Use anymore. Now what I can do is I can come in with a triangle and draw, or a line, I'm sorry, and draw a triangle. I'm actually going to exaggerate the dimensions of this triangle. You can see it's now an enclosed shape that I could use. So we're going to dimension it. So like I said, from the bottom to the very top, and we're going to click the point, not the line. It's going to be 1.5 inches, so 1.5. Okay, and then from the outside edge here to this back is going to be 3.5. And again, we'll take that, and that looks good. We'll finish our sketch. Now we can click Extrude. We will select that material, make sure that we are adding material, make sure it's solid. This is going to be a blind extrusion, not symmetric, because if you remember, this sketch plane is on the inside of this web. So we want to make sure that we are moving out toward the outside of our part here. And in fact, we are. And we're going to go 3/8 of an inch out. And we'll just accept that real quick. And then what we want to do is we want to duplicate this on the other side. And since we have a plane going right down the middle, rather than redo that whole process, creating another plane and drawing this and all that stuff, what we're going to do is we're just going to use the mirror tool. So if we, again, in our 3D tools here, we're not in a sketch or anything. Move down, we've got our patterns. Right next to that is mirror. So it wants to know what we're going to mirror. So the first thing we need to do is switch it from part mirror to feature mirror. Wants to know what features to mirror. The easier thing to do, rather than trying to click this, is to click Extrude 2 on the left here. We'll just click that. Then it wants to know mirror plane. So I'm going to select that red box, and I'm going to click the front plane in this case, because that's the plane going right down the middle. So we're going to reflect across that plane. You can see it's previewing that. These look nice and symmetric, and we'll click Accept. All right, and then last but not least, we want to add our fillets. Now, what size are our fillets going to be? Let's look. Note, all fillets and rounds 1/4 inch in radius. So that's the number that we know. Where are these going to go? We have one main fillet that goes along the back of the plate, so between the back and the base. And then we have fillets along the inside and outsides of the ribs or webs. So that'll be what we do first. So let's do the back fillet first. So we'll set this to 0.25. We're just going to click carefully on lines. We don't want to click a whole surface like this. Just click the line. You can see it's previewing that fillet. And then we'll do another fillet, and again reset our radius to 0.25. And here, because of us doing this one first, it actually saves us a couple clicks. As you can see, that's a continuous edge now because of the fillet. So it actually does the fillet all the way up the edge here. And it blends nicely with the one that we already have there. And there is our completed angle plate.